Hey everyone, my name is Eric Pratum. This is a recorded version of a talk that I typically give to groups. So while there will not be the common engagement back and forth or Q&A that you would have in a live session, I hope that you still find some value in this. Today's topic is better decision making for leaders through mindfulness. In today's fast-paced, content-rich, distraction-laden world, leaders often struggle to make clear decisions under pressure. Many feel they're constantly reacting without ever stepping back to assess the bigger picture. But there's an often overlooked solution to this, and that is mindfulness. In a world full of distractions and constant demands, it's easy for leaders to lose focus and make reactive decisions. Our colleagues, families, and friends depend on us to make sound decisions, especially if we hold positions of power or influence. To be effective decision makers, we must focus our attention on the most important issues. As leaders, the decisions we make shape the direction and success of our teams and organizations. Effective decision making is critical because it impacts every aspect of our roles, from setting strategic goals to managing daily operations and responding to unexpected challenges. This need has grown with the rise of knowledge workers and the increasing role of AI in handling routine tasks. As routine tasks become automated, the value of human decision-making increases, making our ability to make sound decisions even more critical. Many leaders face significant obstacles that hinder their decision-making abilities, such as stress, emotional reactivity, information overload, or plain old distraction. These challenges can lead to suboptimal decisions, affecting not only our performance, but also the well-being of our teams. And this is where mindfulness comes in. While mindfulness is often associated with relaxation and stress reduction, its benefits extend far beyond that. Mindfulness is about being fully present and aware in the moment, thereby enhancing our ability to make clear, balanced, and informed decisions. When you are practicing mindfulness, you are not cutting out something. You are instead bringing to the forefront of your consciousness what the mind is already doing, which is noticing and processing innumerable things. When you're being mindful, you can more effectively choose when and what to focus on instead of being distracted and then wrapped up in one thought or feeling, one shiny object or another, one phone or computer notification, one question or appeal for attention from another person, and another, seemingly unendingly. Most people are rarely mindful. In fact, many operate on autopilot. It's similar to dreaming. Think of a time when you were dreaming. You had no control over what thought came next, and yet you were fully absorbed. This is how many of us go through daily life. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman's research on attention shows that our ability to focus depends on factors like mental fatigue and distraction. The more tired or distracted we are, the harder it becomes to focus on anything. Mindfulness will help you make clearer, faster decisions, even in high-pressure situations. By reducing the experience of distraction, it allows you to focus on what truly matters, improving your ability to lead your team effectively and reducing costly mistakes. A 2020 study found that the average person has over 6,000 thoughts per day, or about one every 9 seconds. And while you can cherry pick any one study or compare one study to another, and different studies do find different numbers of thoughts per person per day, depending on the context or how they're measuring those ideas. For the sake of illustration, let's just go with the number 6,000 for the moment. With so many thoughts constantly flowing through our minds, it's no wonder that staying focused can be such a challenge. Mindfulness helps us manage this overwhelming influx by training our attention on what matters most, so we're less likely to get swept away by the next thought that arises. Think about yourself for a moment. How long can you truly focus on writing an email or listening to a colleague before another thought interrupts, even if only for a second? While you may maintain focus longer in some situations, as Kahneman's research shows, attention is clearly a bigger challenge today than ever before. This constant flitting from one thought to another impacts our ability to maintain focus on tasks, which in turn affects our decision making. When we're not fully present for the appropriate amount of time to do a specific job, our decisions can become fragmented and less effective. The goal of mindfulness is not to stop your thoughts, but to become aware of them. Like the earlier metaphor of dreaming, the aim is not to stop the dream, but to become conscious of what's happening around you so that you're not swept away by one thought while missing the bigger picture. By noticing when our minds wander, we can train ourselves to refocus on the task at hand, which improves our ability to make thoughtful, clear decisions. I'd like you to try a simple mindfulness exercise. And for everyone listening or watching, I'm going to assume for the moment that you're in a place where you can close your eyes and sit down. If you happen to be out on a walk, a run, driving your car, or something else, do your best to follow along, but you may want to revisit this later when you can actually sit and close your eyes. Get into a comfortable position, sit up straight, and close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath in and out. And just go ahead and continue that while I'm talking. Other than listening to me speak, focus as much of your attention as you can on your breath. Notice where you feel it most prominently, whether it's at the tip of your nose, the surface of your lips, or the rise and fall of your chest or stomach. Now, once I stop speaking, I'm going to give you about 60 seconds. During that time, I want you to try to focus solely on your breath. Cover it with all of your attention. While you might have thoughts about other things, gently bring your focus back to your breath whenever you notice your mind has wandered. It's perfectly normal for thoughts to arise. The key is to recognize them and then return your attention to your breathing. So let's go ahead and take about 60 seconds, eyes closed, nice deep breathing. Cover your breathing with all of your attention. Okay, if you've not done so already, please go ahead and open your eyes. How was that experience for you? Did you notice your mind wandering? And then maybe now and then you were able to successfully bring your focus back to your breath? This simple exercise is the foundation for sharpening your decision making during high stakes meetings, negotiations, or when managing competing priorities. With regular practice, you'll find that you can stay calm, focused, and intentional, even in the most difficult situations. University of Washington professor John Gottman has researched what his institute calls emotional flooding. This happens when someone is so overwhelmed by their emotions that their decision-making skills are overpowered. Emotional flooding happens more often than you think. It's not just limited to heated arguments or intense grief, and it can occur even in people who seem emotionally reserved. Research from the Gottman Institute shows that pausing for just 2 seconds between a stimulus and a response can significantly improve performance across a number of different types of tasks and activities. This applies to everything from answering simple questions to handling complex, high-stakes conversations. As a leader, you're constantly required to make quick decisions, prioritize tasks, and navigate high-pressure situations. Mindfulness gives you the mental space to pause, process, and respond thoughtfully, allowing you to stay calm and clear-headed, no matter the challenges you face. When we're mindful, we are less likely to react impulsively and more likely to provide thoughtful, well-considered responses, both qualitatively and quantitatively better. Consider a scenario where a colleague asks you a challenging question. By pausing for a couple of seconds before responding, you give yourself the opportunity to process the question more thoroughly and provide a better, more thoughtful answer. If pausing remains at the level of a hack or a trick, though, you will inevitably forget about it and revert to your old, very common habits. This is why you need to actually practice mindfulness, so that when you have a decision to make, you do so with awareness, intention, and the ability to stay focused on the task at hand, thereby actually doing your job better. As a leader, your ability to manage distractions and focus on what truly matters is key to success. Mindfulness helps you control your thoughts, keeping you focused on strategic priorities and reducing the risk of making reactive, impulsive decisions that can harm your team or organization. By practicing mindfulness regularly, you'll sharpen your focus and decision-making abilities, allowing you to handle complex leadership challenges with greater ease. You'll be able to think more strategically, make quicker decisions, and guide your team more confidently. In his book, The Happiness Hypothesis, social psychologist Jonathan Haidt explains that the mind consists of 2 parts: the elephant, or the impulsive, unconscious mind, and the rider, or the rational conscious mind. While the rider can guide the elephant, it's only possible if the elephant allows it. When the elephant becomes scared, angry, or agitated, it takes control, leaving the rider merely along for the ride. The elephant is in control when you're on autopilot, like when you pull into your driveway and realize you don't remember the drive, or when you impulsively yell at someone and later regret it. Most likely, your rider was distracted and didn't even bother to try to direct the elephant, or was overpowered and simply could not direct the elephant. The elephant, your unconscious mind, just did what it believed was best, which was kept you on the road and got you to your destination. It's the elephant that's in command when a hockey goalie launches at the puck before ever consciously knowing or seeing where it was going. When a musician plays an incredibly fast riff on a guitar or piano. When you burn or cut your finger and are pulling your hand back almost before you even realize it. It's the elephant that's in control when you're emotionally flooded. And more often, it's the elephant that's in control when your phone buzzes and you reflexively look at it, or a colleague asks you a question and you just start speaking. Our unconscious mind often dictates our actions and decisions, sometimes without our conscious awareness. As Haidt says in his book, to make better decisions, we need to do 3 things. Number 1, ensure that our conscious mind is clear and focused on specific goals. Number 2, motivate our unconscious mind by finding emotional connections to our goals. And number 3, shape our environment to minimize distractions for the unconscious mind. Now, it's difficult to equate human thoughts to bits in a computer because the human brain does not function like a computer. But we can use this analogy for the purposes of illustration. While our minds process up to 11 million bits of information per second, according to some estimates, our conscious brain can handle only a fraction of that, about 50 to 400 bits per second, depending on who is doing the comparison and exactly how they're measuring this information. Nonetheless, a large gap exists between what we can process unconsciously and what we can process consciously. And this gap explains why so many of our decisions happen on autopilot. Mindfulness helps bridge this divide, increasing our capacity and our ability to consciously act upon our goals. This disparity in conscious and unconscious bandwidth means there's a lot going on under the surface that we simply are not conscious of. We know our heart beating, much of our breathing, our reaction times, and many other functions are handled unconsciously. But so is a lot of everything else that we do. You can notice this when you're talking to someone. In most cases, the words come out of your mouth before you consciously think them. It's almost as if it's not you choosing the words, but you know it's you. It's just not the same you that deliberates over a decision and then makes a choice. It's the elephant, the unconscious you that processes millions of bits of information and then decides what to say before the conscious you, the rider that only processes maybe 50 bits per second, has time to catch up. It's the elephant turning right or left before the rider even realizes they've come to a fork in the path. Understanding how much happens in our unconscious mind and how often we let the elephant guide our choices helps us see why it's so easy to go on autopilot, reacting instead of thinking. By becoming more aware of our thoughts, we can better manage our responses and make more intentional and better decisions that our colleagues need to be able to rely upon us for. Now, again, I'm going to walk you through an exercise. This exercise comes in 3 phases, and I'll give you a little bit of time between each one to practice. Exercise 1. Close your eyes and imagine your consciousness as a giant lake that you're looking down on from a high vantage point. This lake is vast, with no edges in sight. Everything within your view is water. This represents the space where all of your thoughts and feelings arise. If you can see anything on or above the surface, you are aware of it. It's in your consciousness. Now, we know there's a lot below that surface, as there is in any sufficiently large body of water. Sadly, we just cannot see past the surface. So go ahead and take a few seconds and do your best to visualize looking straight down on this vast lake or other open body of water, seeing no edges in sight. Okay, let's keep our eyes closed. I want you to imagine a spot on the water with ripples radiating out, like when a fish breaks the surface of a still lake. These ripples, at the moment represent your thoughts. Something rises up from your unconscious mind, breaks the surface, and you're suddenly aware of it. You can see it. These could be thoughts about your breathing, the sounds around you, maybe your hands are sweaty, a memory from work, or any number of other things. As you're keeping your eyes closed, imagining looking down on this body of water, anytime a thought occurs to you, you have a feeling or anything else, imagine seeing that thing as a series of ripples radiating out in a circle from one point. Okay, last exercise. Let's keep our eyes closed. As you visualize these ripples, notice how your mind jumps from one thought to another without you deciding to do so. One moment, you're picturing the lake. The next, you're thinking about an itchy foot. Then suddenly you're wondering maybe why your neighbor is talking so loudly. Often, we get so caught up in one set of ripples that we forget about the rest of the lake, the other thoughts and ideas floating around. So let's go ahead and take another little bit of time here and just try to pay attention to how a thought will arise, and you'll sort of get lost in it like a dream. Okay, if you've not done so already, let's go ahead and open our eyes. If the average person has just over 6,000 thoughts per waking day and struggles to focus on a single thought for long, what often happens is similar in this visualization, the zooming in and getting caught up in one set of ripples, then another and another, losing sight of everything else that is going on at the time. This can happen in meetings, conversations, or while working on tasks, leading us to lose sight of our broader goals. One of the problems with this is that we rarely feel distracted or unable to focus. We're simply doing what we do all the time. We're thinking and doing. But isn't that also what happens while we're dreaming? We're certainly thinking, and as far as we experience it in the moment, we are doing something, even if not physically. As far as we're concerned, when we are wrapped up in a dream, we are doing something. But as I've stated, we move from thought to thought unintentionally, effectively becoming the recipients or victims of whatever thoughts we receive and become wrapped up in, rather than the intentional directors of our thoughts and actions. Now, what's the problem with, for example, watching a TV show and having a memory pop up about high school, then focusing on the show again, only to pull out our phones and Google the cast, then deciding that we should check our work and personal email while we have our phones out, then checking social media only to end up doom scrolling for the next 10 minutes. We don't notice that this aspect of our minds is such a problem because we get our tasks done. We answer that colleague's question. We finish the email we're writing. We sit through and participate in the meeting. What we're rarely doing, though, is intentionally focusing. More often than not, what we're actually doing is allowing ourselves to get distracted and just returning over and over and over to the same task. Sending that email response to a colleague, but not giving it our best thought because our mind has just come from the show we're watching to the email and is maybe flitting back and forth while we type, just as one example. The goal of mindfulness is to be aware of all of these ripples on our mental lake, our thoughts and our feelings, without getting caught up in them. For example, being aware of the motivation to pull out our phones or think about that old memory without being drawn in unintentionally. By being aware, by being conscious, we can choose where to direct our focus rather than constantly being pulled from one distraction to another. Let's take the concepts I've discussed and get a more visual experience of this. For this exercise, we have 3 sections. Once again, I'm going to tell you each time about how much time to spend on it, and then I'll give you that time to exercise it. Exercise 1. Sit or stand as if you were going to repeat one of the last exercises, but this time, keep your eyes open and pointed at something simple. Don't look at your device or anything that is moving or has intricate patterns, shapes, colors, writing, or anything like that. Focus on something like a chair, a spot on the wall or carpet in front of you, or maybe a simple decoration. Go ahead and take about 30 seconds to just focus your eyes there and focus your attention on that. Okay, keep your eyes there. Exercise 2. While you keep your eyes pointed toward that one spot, let the focus of your attention move around your visual field to take in other things you can see. For example, if I'm in my office, I might look at the carpet in front of me or the puff guard on my mic, and then keeping my eyes on that spot, consciously notice the items behind or off to the side. To give myself a better chance of really focusing my mental attention, while I keep my eyes focused on the one object or in that one spot, and I move my mental attention around my visual field to other objects, I might ask myself, what are those things? What are the colors and shapes? What are the objects? Keeping my eyes in the same spot, I can then shift my attention to things closer to me on my desk, such as my keyboard or some papers or any number of other things. Let's go ahead and take about 60 seconds. Keep your eyes focused on the one object and move your mental attention around your visual field, doing your best to take in as much as you can about the other things that you see, even though your visual focus on those items might not be as clear as it is on the one item that you're looking directly at. Okay. Keep your eyes in that one spot. Exercise 3. If you have not done it already, keeping your eyes in the same spot, I want you to consciously back out your mental focus. Try to be aware of all the shapes, colors, and patterns in your visual field. You cannot visually zero in on more than one thing, but you can be aware of everything. You're trying to not get lost in the thing you're staring at and stop noticing everything around it in your visual field. Let's go ahead and take about 60 seconds with your eyes in that one spot, but back out your mental attention, your mental focus, and try to take in everything in your visual field as much as possible. Okay. If you've not done so already, let's go ahead and relax. You can look around. Mindfulness is somewhat akin to this exercise. All of those objects are there. And if you think about it, you can take all of them in at varying levels of detail. The closer some object is to the point you're focusing on, the more detail you get. The further out toward the periphery, the less detail your mind can pull in from your eyes. You can point your eyes at a single thing. And even though you can tell yourself right now that you know everything else is there, that's not generally how we experience life. When you are at your desk typing, you're mostly looking at one spot on the screen and maybe thinking about what your fingers are doing. You're more than likely oblivious to all the other things in your visual field. The feeling of sitting in your chair, exactly what each finger is doing, or anything else. You are mentally wrapped up in that typing until a notification pops up to the side, and suddenly your attention is pulled there, and your train of thought for your typing quickly evaporates into nothingness. The more you practice mindfulness, the easier it will become to be aware of all the thoughts and feelings that occur to you, even though you cannot really take in more than one very deeply at any one time. When you are in a state of mindfulness, you have a better chance to choose what to focus on rather than just reacting and getting lost in a thought. To bring this explicitly back to decision making, you cannot control when, for example, a colleague walks into your office or calls you. But once engaged in that conversation, you can be aware of all the thoughts and feelings popping up on the surface of your mental lake. This awareness allows you to choose to focus on the task at hand rather than letting your mind wander, which can result in lack of engagement, poor decision making, and potentially hurt feelings if the other person notices you're not paying attention. Our brains are notorious resource hogs. Despite being relatively small and lightweight, they consume a significant amount of our body's energy. This is not true for many other species because they lack or have very simple, versions of many of the structures that make our brains so powerful, such as, for example, the prefrontal cortex. As humans evolved, our brain's intense energy consumption needed to be optimized. More energy used by any part of the body means more energy must either be consumed through eating or drinking, or taken from some other part of the body. And since food has often been scarce and predators common through human history, our brains having the ability to do more was great, but not if it meant that we lacked the calories needed to power that brain for the time periods needed, or if that energy consumption from our brains meant that we lacked the energy to, for example, run from a predator. To conserve energy, our brains developed ways to reduce unnecessary mental effort. This is where pattern matching comes into play. Rather than processing every detail, our brains look for familiar patterns and quickly categorize them. This conserves energy for novel or unexpected situations that might require immediate attention. In doing this, we are effectively taking what the rider could have done with its low number of bits that it can process at any one time and turning it over to the elephant that has much more processing bandwidth, but also makes decisions to, for example, ignore, react, or take some other action before our rider realizes that, for example, we didn't pay attention to anything our colleague said in the last 5 minutes. Imagine walking into a new conference room for the first time and seeing chairs around the table. Your rider does not spend time examining each one to see how it is unique. Instead, your elephant recognizes the pattern, a seat with 4 legs and a backrest, and effectively says, "Rider, there's nothing to pay attention to here." This pattern matching helps you save mental energy and conscious bandwidth so that you can focus on the things that have historically been more important. Thinking about the unfamiliar things in our environment, people we do not know, objects that are foreign, sounds from the darkness around us in the forest, and so on. However, this same mechanism can lead to issues, especially in leadership. Imagine a colleague who frequently complains but rarely takes action. You might start to pattern match their behavior, tuning them out before you've gathered enough information to know if this encounter will be different. Alternatively, an employee known for being reliable might have an off day, but you might miss the signs because you've categorized them as always dependable. And again, why do you do this? It's easier to let the elephant set the direction so that the rider doesn't have to expend any more energy than necessary. Pattern matching can cause us to overlook important details and make assumptions that are not always accurate. This can lead to missed opportunities, poor decision-making, and strained relationships within our teams. I know that we've all been in situations where we felt that someone wasn't giving us their full attention. But how about this for another possible situation of pattern matching? Whether you're male, female, black, white, straight, gay, or anything else, have you ever felt like you were getting the all blank people are like that treatment? For example, I'm an American that has lived overseas 3 times, and I've done a fair amount of traveling in my life. Even if I make allowances for some sense of insecurity or simply just misunderstanding on my part, I can tell you without a doubt that I have been pattern matched to something like all Americans are like that numerous times. In most cases, this is harmless. In some, it's not. But regardless of whether harm is done or not, it certainly does not feel good for me. And it leads those doing the pattern matching to not engage with and appreciate me in the ways that make me unique from the pattern they match me to. And yet, our brains are built to do this so that we can put our energy toward the things that we perceive as being new or novel, and not the things that we think we already understand well. If all Americans are like that, or all men or women are like that, for example, I consciously or unconsciously believe that I can focus on something else. As leaders, it's crucial to be aware of this tendency and consciously challenge our assumptions. Mindfulness can help us stay present, notice these patterns, and make more intentional decisions. Next time you have a chance to make a decision, you can do something as simple as take a moment to become aware of your thoughts and feelings. You can visualize your mental lake. You can take a breath before responding. Or you can do what I sometimes like to do, which is to ask myself, what am I doing? I might, for example, not truly be paying attention to the task in front of me. And sometimes I also ask myself, what do I think about this? This can help to break out of pattern matching. And sometimes, whatever it is that just came to mind is actually worth your attention. But you taking a second to ask yourself what you think about it gives you the opportunity to weigh it against everything else that you have going on and say, for example, I'll get to that later, rather than just getting distracted by something new. One of the simplest metaphors for focus and decision-making is to think of the mind as a muscle. While we could talk about different mental muscles like empathy or critical thinking, let's just keep it simple. Most of us struggle with focus. Our minds jump from notifications to memories, emails, grocery lists, and more, often without us realizing that we're not giving full, uninterrupted attention to any one thing. Imagine training your ability to focus and make decisions just like you would train your body for running or weightlifting. The simplest way to improve the strength of your mental focusing and decision-making muscles is to 1, dedicate a small amount of time every day to practice, and 2, isolate and use those muscles when appropriate. What you make time for daily has the biggest impact on your life. We all make time to eat, sleep, work, talk to our families, scroll through social media, or check the news. Some of these activities help, while others harm. But what we do every day has a greater impact than, say, the weightlifting we might do once a week. To incorporate mindfulness into your daily routine, first, spend 10 minutes a day practicing mindfulness meditation. Second, choose a focus area, such as general mindfulness, attention to your breath, or empathy for that person you're having a hard time appreciating right now. Third, set a quiet alarm to help you stay on track. And fourth, and finally, close your eyes, take deep breaths, and focus solely on your chosen intention. I do think of this as roughly equivalent to physical training. If I'm doing a general mindfulness meditation, it's somewhat akin to doing a general workout, like a walk, run, or bike ride. Focusing on something specific, like your breath, is similar to working a specific muscle group, like doing a back or biceps workout. Consistency and structure are just as important for training your mental muscles as they are for anything else in life. Now, I know it's difficult to set aside time for daily practice. If you don't exercise a muscle, though, it's much more difficult to use it when needed. If you never walk or jog, it's hard to sprint for the airplane as the gate is closing. If you never do push-ups, pull-ups, or some other form of physical activity, it's harder to do things like push your kids on a swing or lift them up as much as you and they might like. The same is true of your mind. If you don't practice mindfulness, it will be harder to focus and make the high value and critical decisions you're likely being paid good money to make. There's no trick or hack that will work in the long run. So sure, you can follow a 5-step process or a 3-question decision tree, but the most reliable way to use mindfulness daily for better decision making, after, of course, practicing regularly, is to recognize when mindfulness would be most especially valuable. Then ask yourself a few simple questions or direct your mental energy toward what matters and use those mental muscles. Many of us have found ourselves in situations where we realize we could put down our phones and pay attention to our child or close our laptops and focus on a meeting. But switching your focus is not always the right move. It's simply another set of ripples on the surface of your mental lake. To evaluate competitors for your attention and intentionally put your focus on one of those things, ask yourself 2 questions. 1, what am I doing right now? Are you writing an email while half-heartedly nodding to your child or colleagues? Are you watching TV while doom scrolling on your phone? First, figure out where your attention is going and where it is not. For example, a colleague calls me while I'm in the middle of writing a strategy document. I greet them and engage minimally until they request a response, because my mind mostly just keeps going on the task I was focused on before their call. What am I doing here? What am I paying attention to? The second question, what do I think about this? Taking a few seconds to acknowledge the new set of ripples on your mental lake can be more than enough time to simultaneously allow you to determine whether this new thing is worth devoting your attention to. If it's worth attempting to multitask alongside something else, or if it should be shelved for later. Often, for me, this will result in me making a note to come back to whatever the new thing is. For example, I'm in the middle of a meeting. I remember I need to order something for my daughter's birthday, and I make a digital note rather than going to order the thing, which would only take my mental focus away from the meeting for longer. This seems obvious, but honestly, how often do you think of something during a meeting and start working on that thing almost immediately? No matter who you are, whether you're a critical thinker, emotionally volatile, or something else, you and the people who depend on you will benefit from better decision making. This might mean improving the quality of your decisions while increasing the speed at which you make them, or being more focused and mentally present in your life. Imagine facing a sudden crisis at work. A client is upset, the team is stressed, and decisions need to be made quickly. Instead of reacting impulsively, you take a moment to center yourself, refocus, and address the situation calmly. This mindful pause allows you to make thoughtful decisions that are best for your team and your client. In today's fast-paced world, mastering mindfulness is not a luxury, it's a necessity. By becoming more present and intentional in your decisions, you'll not only improve your leadership, but also experience greater clarity and calm in both your personal and professional life. To unlock the full potential of your leadership, I encourage you to start practicing mindfulness today. Even small daily exercises can help you make clearer, more intentional decisions and improve your focus over time. And if you have any questions, of course, you can always send me an email at eric@inboundandagile.com. Thank you and good luck.